we're not liking how some of the internationals are being treated.
Given the current migration map, what should international students do when they want to apply for the visas?
The easier way to get permanent residency in Australia is finding a job. You've got to write a good email and a lot of people don't.
The person who has done bachelor's degree in Australia or master's degree, do you think they can't write an email?
I don't think the Victorian state government would have a large footprint for immigration.
National Innovation Visa. Actually, they are looking for internationally acclaimed people in different fields. And why they call it national? Person from America wants to migrate.
Yes.
He's doing a good job, but he couldn't find a job here. He can still apply for NIV. Do you foresee any additional changes coming in the near future?
Oh, definitely. Yep.
Yes?
They're going to bring that. Now they're going to have a new dictionary called ASCO, which is going to slightly change some of the codes and which will have some new occupations on that list.
There are people sitting out in various parts of the world, including Australia, who do not have any idea about what global talent was or what NIV is.
Yeah.
It's same thing, apples and oranges for us. It's apples and oranges or green apples and red apples?
Red apples and red apples.
Read the line first, then read the last. It's stanza 1 or stanza 4. I don't know. It's a big conundrum, confusion, illusion in the new Australian immigration policy. So today on my podcast, I have invited an expert to clarify what recent changes are doing and what impacts it would have generally on the migrants. Let's talk to Matthew Luscombe. Hey Matthew.
Good afternoon.
Good
How are
afternoon.
you?
I'm good.
That's good. You're looking well.
Yeah. Where is the Australian immigration system going?
Yeah, well, they've just had another lot of changes. They're always changing, but this one they've been promising for a long, long time. And well, I thought it would be a bigger change, but it hasn't been. They've really just formalised things that were already happening to a certain degree. But yes, there has been changes.
There are.
And they gave us about a week's notice, even though they've been talking about the changes for a long, long time.
But what prompted these changes?
Well, I think the conversation would have started with, we're not liking how some of the internationals are being treated.
That's
Certainly
why?
some of the employment of the internationals maybe hasn't been how they wanted to see it. So they've made it easier for the international to get PR when they're working for someone.
Okay. Do they align well with the mission of Australian immigration?
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah. I watched a great seminar the other day about, he was sort of a numbers boffin in the government, and he was the main guy doing all the stats and working through all the figures, analysing all the figures. It was really interesting that they do drill down pretty deeply. They had the stats were pretty detailed. It followed the progress and outcomes of all the different visas and what percentage their income is greater than the locals.
Okay.
And what happens to the secondary applicants of the primary applicants, and that usually is not just the spouse, it's the children, and how the children's wages are equal, if not greater, than the Aussie kids' wages and that sort of thing. It was quite enlightening. It was actually a better outcome than I thought a lot of the internationals were having in Australia.
Did they draw a comparative analysis about the things?
Yeah, and there was a lot of it was drilled down that deeply about how if you stuck with the occupation that you entered Australia with, what your wage would end up being. And if you changed occupations during the process of getting your visa and staying in Australia, if you changed, what would happen to your wage? And the drop of wage was quite interesting if you didn't stick with your intended occupation. And if you stayed with your occupation, it was something like 40% better than the average in Australia. The stats were quite, it was quite enlightening. And it was
interesting also.
Very interesting and very good to see that the outcomes were good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So given the current migration map, what should international students do when they want to apply for the visas? What should be the strategy they should have?
Right. Well, all these changes aren't to do with your general school migration. They're not to do with those 190 visas or 491s or 189s. It's all to do with the 186s and the 482s and the work visas.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they're working on those first because they want to make sure that the internationals aren't abused, work-wise. Abused is not the right word, taken advantage of in the workplace. So they're starting on that to get that. But it also, I think, they're doing that because the best way to get permanent residency in Australia, I think, the easier way to get permanent residency in Australia is finding a job and getting the boss to sponsor you. And they've made that more of a definite, more of a secured pathway going from your temporary work visa to your permanent work visa, and that's the main change.
So
They've made one list. They've called it the CSOL. It used to be called, years ago, it used to be called the CSOL. It was called the Consolidated List. Now it's called the Core Skilled Occupation List. And now there's just one list. They took a few occupations off, but they added a few in. And they took off post office manager, all these occupations that I don't think anyone had ever been sponsored for. They took those off, and they've made it more definite because every occupation can go through the direct and the TRT, the indirect, which before you had these two lists, and some allowed you to go direct, others didn't, and all this sort of thing. But now it's more definite, so it's quite a good. It's good. It's a lot of weight for such a small change. Well, it was a large change, but it was a small change, I suppose. They didn't change much, but I suppose it is a big change.
Yeah. Matthew, as you were saying that people should find jobs.
Yeah.
The skilled professionals are benefited through that for the permanent residency. So how do these new rules affect them applying for the visas? Because there are a lot of changes in the skilled occupation list and things.
I don't really know what you mean by that. We just got to get a job, and it's hard getting a job. I came over from Adelaide, a lifetime ago, 25 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy finding a job. And I just came internally
it is
from
still
a state,
difficult, Matthew.
and it's still difficult. And it's actually the job market is probably a lot harder now than it's ever been.
It is unpredictable market.
Yes.
At one point they say we need workers, we need people.
Yep.
But skilled workers are still unemployed.
Yeah, but you've got to be employable. And the trouble is finding a job in Australia, you need to meet all the criteria of the job. You've got to have great English. You've got to write a good email. And a lot of people don't. I'm not saying Aussies do, but a lot of internationals have got to be more employable, I think.
Yeah. The person who has done bachelor's degree in Australia or master's degree, do you think they can't write an email? They can't? They can. How do you see? Because you meet people when they come to you for visa filing. Can they write an email?
Well, it's not so much writing an email. It's being I think English is a hard language, and English can be taken, if you're not very good at English, a sentence can be taken in a number of different ways.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a hard language.
Yeah, I asked you this question, but I have something to say on this. There are people who have master's degrees, especially in Australia I've seen, and back home also they have 1 or 2 bachelors already, masters, and still they can't communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the bachelors might not be about English.
Yep.
Bachelor's might be about maths or
Yep.
facts,
Yep.
or being able to analyse data.
But the medium
or,
is English.
Or computer. You don't necessarily need to
But the
know
medium
English.
is medium of instruction is English.
Yeah, that's listening, not exactly, mostly not writing it down.
But they're
repeating
writing
it.
down the exams because in back home, if I talk
Maybe
about
Word has got Grammarly or AI on it.
Grammarly is pretty new. I'm talking about, especially if we talk about the Southeast Asian countries, and the system is like where you write essay type questions, and that's if your medium of instruction is English, you are putting the exam in English.
But
MCQs are
Indian
English
English
in
is very
trend.
different than Australian English.
The English is
different.
English.
No, it's a completely different language.
No, how?
It would be like me walking into New York and starting to talk to a New Yorker. He wouldn't understand me.
That you're talking with slangs, right?
Well, a lot of the language
On
is.
proverbs, some idioms,
Yeah.
but the base of the English is same. How you
It
construct the
is.
sentence, how you put up a letter, how you put up an email, how you communicate, how you do the interview. That is same. No?
Yep. But most probably, we're harping on the English. That's not the whole thing. There's a different way of acting. I don't know. There's lots of things. You've got to practice all that. And I think most of my clients are starting to realise you do have to start at the bottom and work your way up.
Okay.
And that helps. So you need time. And the trouble with some of these visas these days is, for a while over COVID, there was an opportunity to stay for a while and move up the ranks. Now some of the visas are too short mostly to do that.
Yeah, that was my question. How these new rules affect the already employed skilled workers applying for the visas?
Oh, fantastically.
It's a good
I'd say
opportunity
half
for
my
them.
clients have gone from having to do a 482 for 2 years to then transition into a 186 permanent. And they already had the work experience, but they didn't have the work experience while holding a 482 visa. Now they can go straight for a 186. It'll just come down to whether the boss wants to do a 186 now for them. But most of my clients have saved, these new rules have saved most of my clients 2 years of their life.
So this was skilled workers. How the new rules will affect the already existing international students studying in Australia who are already pursuing the education?
Well, don't forget, it's not a GSM. It's not a general school migration change. The list change is only for the work visas.
No, nothing has happened.
It's got nothing
to
to do with the cohort of
the
general school
international
migration.
students. All right.
Yeah, it's got to do with internationals, but it's not the general school migration.
I understand.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understand.
yeah, yeah.
Matthew, you remember in 2020 when people were reeling down, all the economies were reeling down with this corona crisis, the migration policy came
Yep.
where PhD was out of the list from Victorian sector only, Victorian state.
Yeah,
so
but the
has anything
PhD
come up like that
Well,
that
the
is going to
PhD
hammer
is-
the people studying?
Well, but the PhD has you've always had an opportunity through the
190.
no 858 the NIV, the one we're about to talk about next.
The global talent.
Distinguished Talent Visa.
Yep, they had, but that is a very difficult path. You see?
Well, but if you've done a PhD, it wouldn't be a difficult path.
It is not. See, like
If
we were
you've done a
talking.
PhD, you are going to be meeting some of the rules.
Yeah, but my question was, we'll talk about this. My question was, like that change suddenly came, and I know 7-8 people. For them, it was a blow because when they came to know that PhD is out of the list from the Victorian state.
But that's a state issue,
Yeah,
not
state
a
issue.
Commonwealth issue.
Yeah, but these are Commonwealth changes, but they do affect the
The
state.
states have some weird and wonderful different views, and under our constitution, the states have nothing to do with immigration. They were never allowed to.
So the state
they-
also
they-
does different rules?
Yeah, because the state is just there. The Commonwealth ran out of ways to pick people, so I'm assuming they thought, who's going to help us pick? And they thought, well, the states should know what's required in each state, so they gave the job to the states, and that's what the 491 and 190 are for.
Yeah.
That's for the states to go, right, we're a tomato picking area, therefore we need tomato pickers, or whatever the thing is. And they were the ones who changed. Vic had that scheme where you did a PhD, we will give you a visa, we'll sponsor you for PR. The trouble with all these rules, and
You know,
No, but the trouble with all these rules is I don't think anyone realises the demand for Australia. You make a rule that, I don't know, well, the PhD rule, you make a rule like that, you'll have 100,000 people doing a PhD. Now, I assume that's what happened.
in Victoria.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
they've made the rule and sat back, well, let's wait for the 10 applications from all these PhD. And they got 100,000 applications. They said, hang on, we've only got a quota of 1,500 to hand out.
Yeah.
So we better cut that program out. And everyone would then stop doing PhDs. And they should have really stopped to think, what is it going to create? Why don't we go to the universities and say we're about to make this rule? So when people are applying for the PhDs, maybe be a bit, I don't know, maybe be a bit more cutthroat about who you let do a PhD. I don't know. What there would have been a way to manage.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. They should have something on the rudimentary level
It'd be a
to
bit like
stop
saying-
people doing that.
Or a bit like saying, let's drop $1 billion in the middle of the street. Well, if you don't, if you did that, you'd want to talk to the police and you'd want to talk to the traffic control.
Yeah.
You want to find out, is it okay we do that? And just, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I'm not going to name the person, but I went to a public event where these people were talking to one of the ministers.
Yep.
Yeah, not the immigration minister, one of the ministers. And the minister said, oh, I don't know about it. I don't know.
Well, I don't think the Victorian state
That
government...
was the state minister.
Yeah, but I don't think the Victorian state government would have a large footprint for immigration. I don't. I've got no idea, but I imagine it's a Commonwealth thing. Under our constitution, it is a Commonwealth thing. So you'd have a large department in the Commonwealth government, but I'm assuming the state department would have 5 staff and running around madly, doing the work of 10 people or whatever. I assume it'd be a smaller thing because they don't really have, and certainly now the business visas have been cut out, and that would have been the majority of their staff. There'd only be 2 or 3, I assume, doing, GSM policy and going through, picking people out of the ROVs and stuff like that. I don't think it'd be an enormous department, and so I don't think the ministers would even get involved in that. All the ministers would be understanding of immigration is that the stat of, is it 40% of all migrants come to Melbourne and 59% go to Sydney, and the 1% left go to other places.
Okay,
Making those numbers up.
The federal ministers who have been given the portfolios have the right to do that. This is what you are saying? Only the immigration minister is responsible for this, like planning.
The only
planning.
thing I think the state departments would know about is that we appear to be getting greater than our share of the immigration. It's not being shared out, and they've tried policies to try to share it amongst the states. But I don't know if that's worked. I don't know whether South Australia or Western Australia, Queensland have really had an influx of immigration as much as New South Wales.
Matthew, you were talking about distinguished talent and global talent.
Yes.
Which is now being converted to NIV, as you mentioned.
Is it?
National Innovation Visa. We'll talk about this name also.
Why do they
what
call
is
it
national?
do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Actually, they are looking for internationally acclaimed people in different fields. And why they call it national?
I reckon it's because they are trying to promote the idea that you might be internationally recognised, but we're actually looking for people that are going to promote our country. So it's a national, yeah, correct. Well, that it has to be promoting Australia with your international talent.
Maybe, or they might be adding to the national economy.
Yeah, there we go, adding to the national
the
economy.
money thing, right?
Yeah, because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, we can make guesses
correct.
from our perspectives. Okay, Matthew, my question was, you said that PhD was there for global talent all the time. It's there still.
Correct.
Because they're
Priority.
looking for scholars and things.
Yeah, because they're looking for Nobel Peace Prize winners first.
Like Bill Gates,
Shouldn't
you
laugh.
say?
They're yep. They're looking for Nobel Peace Prize. That would have been.
Yeah, but my question
When
is.
they all had a straight face in the boardroom when someone mentioned that.
Yeah, for example, a normal PhD student who is very good at research but has not written many articles because he could not pitch there. Because
then he wouldn't be
it's-
internationally recognised.
so he will not be eligible for global talent.
No, but then if he wants the visa, then he would become internationally recognised.
Yeah, he would, but I'm saying that I've seen people, like I know many who have done PhDs. Not everyone is on the writing part. They don't write journal articles, and it is not an
You're
eligible
saying their
to.
English is not up to scratch? I thought you were telling me earlier that their English is perfect.
Yeah, my question was, that's not the eligibility criteria that they write the articles and then they complete the PhD. But I tell you, 90% of the people do that. But there are some, like, let's talk about a mathematician.
Yeah.
He has done some research on some theorem. He's very good, but he did not write a single article. But he can bring a lot to the national economy or to national growth if he is picked.
Yeah, but wouldn't he have lots of citations, what do they call it? Wouldn't
When he doesn't have article, he doesn't have any citation.
Yeah, but wouldn't his PhD have been an article?
No, it's not necessary.
Wouldn't
This
he
is what I'm
learn how to
saying.
post it or whatever you do?
No, this is what I'm saying. I've met few people during that time when I was accidentally involved in that debate, which was happening in that public event. There are people who have 20, 25 articles written during their PhDs. There are people who have written 100 also. There are people who did not write even a single article because they just have to give the thesis, right? So they wrote the thesis.
Maybe this could be a new business. You could go around to the universities and teach PhD graduates how to promote their story, their
Yeah.
theory, their
Yeah.
research.
Yeah, but the thing is, the guides, it according to me, it depends upon the supervisor in PhD. Who's your supervisor? If the supervisor wants the articles, your articles go in. If the supervisor is lazy,
Oh, can't you post your article yourself?
you can. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Some people don't get the pitch. They're very intelligent, but they are not social.
Right, so
They
they're
don't
They're not
understand.
marketers.
Yeah, they get a blow when what happened in 2020. The rules, PhD is out. Now what they would do? They don't qualify for global talent because during the entire PhD they don't have a single
hopefully
journal article.
Yeah, but hopefully they get a job. They get a very long 485 after a PhD, so they should have plenty of time to get a job and work through the
Through normal skilled migration.
normal. Go through the SID.
Matthew, I'm very intrigued to this question that people do PhDs to get PR or that is just their research work. Many times I ask, but people don't answer honestly that why did they do PhD?
Well, I assume some people do it because you can get more points for their PhD.
Masters and
increase-
PhD has the same points. Masters by research and
good
PhD.
point. But no one
same
seems to
points.
do that masters by research.
Why not?
I don't know.
It's for 2 years,
Hmm.
and PhD is for at least 4 years. Those who don't have research background, why don't they do that?
I assume it is more costly.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
The masters by research? No.
Oh, isn't it?
PhD is expensive.
So if you do the masters by coursework, how much less is it than masters by
Say it's
research?
the same. I believe it is same because I had I'm in very detailed discussion with those people. It's same.
Oh, right.
I
Because
think
you
it's
certainly
lack
get
of
more points.
guidance.
So you
Maybe.
get more points for it, and you get more points if you do it in the right.
Yeah, maybe
Right, so-
your counterparts in the industry are pushing people to go for PhD and they get more money in their pockets.
I doubt it.
Is-
I thought PhDs were invited some of the time, aren't they? Don't you get invited to do a PhD?
No, you can.
Well, you apply, but it's not like you're guaranteed a spot.
Yeah, invited PhDs are different. According to me, I don't know whether I'm right or not. When you get invited, you don't have to pay a single dollar. You get scholarship,
Right.
and you do the PhD. I'm talking with the international students doing PhD,
Right.
or the nationals doing PhD when they don't have an invitation or a sponsorship by any supervisor. At that time, it is a very expensive process. And you know, when people apply for loans in the banks for PhD, nationals also,
Yeah.
they don't get those loans.
Yeah, right.
It's very difficult journey. This is what I was asking. Like, anyways, we're not talking with the nationals, we're talking with the internationals.
Okay.
For example, they spend like approximately $70,000, $80,000 and still they are thrown out of the list and like, oh, global talent, oh, I'm not eligible for the criteria. And like, what should I do? Should I go to Adelaide, Brisbane, or Perth, or Tasmania? This is what they think. And we lose the academic intellectuals that we were preparing. No? You feel?
Yeah, I don't know. Don't know. I don't know much about that PhD world. And we're looking for economic benefit, I think, to
Maybe.
the state. And I don't know how it correlates between PhD graduates and benefit to the economy.
Yeah,
Dunno.
maybe that's the point. So do you think this national innovation visa is an improvement to the global talent?
Well, there's no rule change. It's
There's no
exactly
rule
the same-
change.
it's the exact
So
same.
distinguished
The only
talent
thing
still
that's changed-
exists?
Well, that is the distinct, the 858, or whatever number, whatever subclass it is.
So,
so
distinguished talent visa and global talent visa were the same thing?
well, no, we won't talk about the old visas. It's no use.
Yeah,
But
they are gone.
They're gone.
Both are gone.
Yep.
And
there's
now NIV
correct.
exists. That's
and
it.
there's how many streams? And there's a number of streams. But the main change, we won't go too much detail about it, but there's very little change apart from the ministerial direction. And that explains what the priorities are.
Yep.
And that's that 112 ministerial direction. And that, if you have a quick look at it, you'll see it appears to be harder to get the global talent visa than it was before. And that priority is, even though it's not that much detail in the priority document, it does give a bit more detail than they did before about who would be picked. But the other main change is now you can't apply for the visa direct. You've actually got to do an EOI.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's the change. And that's a
Yeah.
very minor change. What was the secret behind this whole time?
Well, I
Visa
think
is
everyone was getting
changing.
excited because they thought it would be part of the business program would be put into this. And it still might be, but they haven't mentioned it. And they did always promise that after stopping the business visas a year and a half ago, or stopping the state sponsorship to be able to go for a business visa a year and a half ago, we thought that this would be, they'd make a sort of a innovation visa for the business people, but they haven't. But hopefully they will next year.
Do you think, Matthew, and this is for the visa, for example, a person from America wants to migrate.
Yes.
He's doing a good job, but he couldn't find a job here. He can still apply for NIV. He couldn't find a job in Australia.
Yeah.
But
Well,
he
if you look at
qualifies.
the priorities.
But he qualifies
He
in
might,
the priority sector.
yeah, he might qualify in the priority sector. He might be a Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Yeah. So, but he doesn't have a job. Still, he will
Yep.
be invited.
Yep. Yeah. That whole 175,000 a year income. That's just another priority thing. It's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement. That's good.
It's
That's
a
good to
priority,
know.
But it's a priority factor.
That's a good piece of information for people who are aspiring to get, like as I know, like you have been doing global.
Well,
talent.
you if you are a Nobel Peace Prize winner, you don't need to have 175,000 income.
Matthew, as you have done this global talent, which does not exist anymore from quite a long period of time, how about we doing a separate program on NIV and educate people all over the world how this thing works?
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. Because you could spend a bit of time explaining the past and what they would have known of the global talent
Yep.
visas, what the numbers were. Yeah.
There are people sitting out in various parts of the world, including Australia, who do not have any idea about what global talent was or what NIV is.
Yeah.
Right? It's same thing. Apples and oranges for us. It's apples and oranges or green apples and red apples.
It's the same.
Red apples and green apples, right? You
Red
said
apples
same,
and
same.
Red apples and red apples. Really, the only rule change is that you can't do one directly. You got to go through the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. We'll educate those who actually did not have any idea what global talent was.
The definition of who's meant to get this has been defined. It might not have been any different before, but it appears to the definition of who should get it seems a bit tough.
It is. We'll
Now,
talk about.
was it tough before? I don't know, because all the ones I got,
All right.
I'd say all the ones I got were deserving,
All right.
even under the new rules.
As you talked about new rules, how should I frame this? What advice do you want to give to the skilled workers to secure a permanent residency pathway in Australia?
Well, you've got to realise you've got to have enough points. If it's a 189 general skilled migration, just look down the list that the government supplies you. Look at all the stats. You can see the occupations, you can see the points. If you don't have the points they say on that thing, you're not going to get picked. And you've got to be educated about what the states are looking for. It's no use being a XYZ occupation when you can go to the state sites and see that the occupation priorities are certain priorities. If you're not one of those, you're not going to get picked.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a bit of a lottery, but at the same time, there's enough information out there to see, and I suppose I get a bit hot on it because I get a lot of people that think because they've entered the system, they're going to get picked.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming that's a lot of the agents blowing wind, just not telling them the full facts, and they're telling them, oh yes, on 65 points, and
That is a problem.
is going to get picked. Well, it's just not. Yeah.
That is one of the fundamental problems.
I assume so, because I get a lot of people that are quite assured that they're going to get picked.
Yep.
And that's why I'm so hot on the employer-worker visas, is because that is a guaranteed
Yep. Yes.
program.
Yep.
And it's not a lottery. And I know it's hard, and I know it's hard to get a boss on side and all that sort of thing, but
Yep. I wanted to ask you this question, that what are some of the common mistakes that the applicants are likely to do under new rules? And you said one, they'll go to the migration consultants and they will listen to every word they speak, and it depends upon the conscience of that migration consultant how that person is guiding him or her on the peer pathway.
I assume so. No, look, I would have never said something like this, but I am already noticing that the migration agents are dabbling in visas.
Yeah. As Matthew, you pointed out, I was about to ask you a question, that what are the most common mistakes that are likely to take place for the existing skilled workers or existing international students, and you pointed out that they would be allured by the wrong advices
Correct.
and things.
Expectations.
What else would be a hindrance in their way to secure permanent pathway to residency in Australia?
I don't really know what you mean, but work, not getting the points, not being eligible, so therefore not getting enough points.
Yeah, that would be a common mistake.
Yep, and not, but that's not really a mistake. That's, you can either get 8 in each English or equivalent, or you can't. And finding work. Now I know all my clients are madly trying to find work, and they're very keen to get work, but it's finding the job is hard.
So, do you foresee any additional changes coming in the near future?
Oh, definitely. Yep.
Yes?
They're going to bring the new. At present, we use the ANSCO dictionary, which defines all the jobs and gives the code for the jobs, for the occupations.
Occupations, yeah.
Now they're going to have a new dictionary called ASCO, which is going to slightly change some of the codes, and which will have some new occupations on that list.
Which will eliminate the New Zealand part.
Correct.
Out of it.
That's it.
That's the thing?
That's it.
All right.
But that's not the main. It will be just more of an update, modern dictionary of occupations that are in Australia. So there'll have to be a number of changes. They might be waiting to do changes for the GSM for that, because there's always been talk they're going to change the point system, the actual way points are allocated, which I think would be a good idea. It's been good to date, but no doubt a change would be good. They should give, I think, higher points to work.
Yep.
And they should, my theory is, and whether it happens or not, my theory is I'd love them to see, if you're on a 482 visa, give lots and lots of points.
Yep.
Because if you've been able to navigate, finding a job's hard, if you've been able to navigate into finding a job and then convincing a boss to sponsor you, being good enough for a boss to sponsor you, then you would get extra points, and then instead of having to waste the time of the boss to do a 186 permanent, you'd automatically get picked for a 190 or 189 because you'd have higher points than everyone else. And that would be then attract people to realise that work is what we're looking at work, paying taxes, greater productivity, all that sort of thing, filling the skills gap.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Matthew, as the Australian sun is peeking on your face,
Yes.
let's wind up this conversation today here, and I'll catch you in the next podcast, and we'll talk about NIV.
Certainly.
Thank you for joining
see
us
you.
today.
Thanks.
So it was Matthew Luscombe talking about the recent Australian migration changes, and very soon we'll come up with a new podcast. Stay tuned on my podcast. Keep watching, subscribe us, and leave a comment. How did you like it? Thank you.